Welcome to Coachify, a podcast where we have moving conversations for expats with a coaching mindset on everyday topics. We bring helpful concepts closer to you so you can use them in your everyday life. I am Reka, a life coach working with expats, focusing on change management and resilience. You can connect with me by Instagram, Facebook, or my website, theenchantedyou.com. You will find more information about me, my guest, and about our topic in the episode notes. Today, my guest is Orsi again, who is an English language and culture trainer, and she moved from Hungary to the US. Welcome, Orsi, and thank you for joining me.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
We had a talk before with Orsi in another episode about her experience in the US generally. If you haven't listened to that one yet, then definitely go and listen to that episode. Today, we continue our conversation, and our topic will be Orsi's first year in the US and the challenges which came with that one year. Orsi, you mentioned during our first conversation that after your arrival, you could not work for 1 year. Could you tell us more about this?
That is true. That is true. So, yeah, the reason for this was my visa process because we had to apply. Well, I had to apply for a green card to acquire my permanent residency. And the rule is that applicants are not allowed to work until they get their work permit. So that was the basis for this. And yeah, so this was a pretty difficult time for me because I've always been a very active person.
Mm-hmm.
I like my job. I love to work. And I really enjoyed my work back in Hungary, which was also teaching. So this period has had its challenges for sure.
How did you manage to keep yourself sort of in a loop, or how did you manage to have this grasp of reality in your everyday when you couldn't, just go to a day job or couldn't be that active how you used to be?
Mhm. So interestingly, maybe I mentioned it in the previous podcast episode. So the first year, my first year in the US was COVID 2020. So I think that time was challenging for everyone, and it looked similar to everyone around the world. So we were confined in our home, and this was the same for me. And to make it more interesting, we lived together with my wonderful mother-in-law and our dog in a two-bedroom apartment for that year.
Wow.
So, yeah. And it had its advantages as well, because this way I was immersed in American culture. So I learned a lot from my mother-in-law, from my husband, and of course, our dog kept us company. Yeah, which was amazing. Yeah, so during this first year, I developed a really rigid, let's say rigid, not rigid, kind of flexible routine. So I had some activities that were non-negotiable every single day. And since I'm a language teacher, and that's one of my passions to learn languages, so my goals were to polish my English and to keep up my German. And also, I started learning Spanish from scratch. Yeah. So this kept me like 3 hours to do every day. And I also prioritized mental health. So meditation routines, visualization routines that are really important for me. And also physical activity. So mind and body together. Yeah.
I
And
love
I'm
that
wondering
you
if you have, oh,
yeah,
yeah.
sorry. I just love that you mentioned both mind and body, because even during COVID, it was really important that we keep this balance. And I also built a routine for myself during that time. That's when I started to work out again. Um, and it helps us stay fit, not just like physically fit, but also our minds. And you would think that you don't need physical fitness for the fitness of your mind, but actually you do, because it helps you circulate the blood in your body, and it helps get you in a better mood.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And what was your physical activity? What did you enjoy doing?
Well, similarly to your experience when COVID started, um, I was closed up with friends because we went to visit friends in the mountains. At that time, I lived in Czech Republic, and we were basically closed in a house, three adults with one cat. And I arrived with 5 days worth of clothes, and we spent there 1.5 months because we couldn't go back to Prague. And at that time, it was so strict that could only go for walks outside. But then when I got back to Prague and it was still locked down, then I started to do daily workouts with an app on my phone, and it helped me. And we talked about this in another episode with another of my guests. It helped me put this sort of boundary between work and personal life. So what I did was I finished working and I closed the computer. And when I closed the computer, I immediately changed to my workout clothes and started to do my workout. So sort of that was a transition from work life to personal life or home life, even though I couldn't have, this separation of commuting home or doing anything else, and really just basic workouts like strengthening workouts at home. And later, after the whole thing passed, I started running. I got my dog, and things progressed. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like this that you mentioned that you need to have your separate space for work and for leisure. For me, this looked like I worked in the kitchen and yeah, and I worked out in the room or outside when it was allowed to go outside. So yeah. I also had my spaces in a way. Yeah, it helped separate things. But actually, yeah, so it was the three of us, and we could hear each other all the time. And I could hear my mother-in-law talking over the phone, also overheard her business calls sometimes, which actually supplied me with a lot of language, with a lot of things. I learned how to talk about business, how to talk with clients from her. So I'm actually really grateful for this.
What helped you adjust to the new environment? Because after all, you ended up in a new country and in a new culture, quite far from your home country. What helped you adjust and fit in to this new place?
Again, I think that I'm really privileged to have this safety net, this family here in the US. So for me, it was a given. My husband helped me a lot, and my mother-in-law helped me a lot with adjusting because whenever I just had a question, I didn't understand something, or I didn't know about a concept, or even how to start my business, I had help. So I could just ask them, call them, text them. So they were literally just a phone call away for me. So yeah, my situation is probably different from many expat situations who come here with their family and they have to figure everything out on their own. So yeah, for me, they were my safety net and my rock here in the US.
That sounds really
So yeah,
great.
yes. And also, I have to mention my friends from home who stick with me till present day, and that really helped too. So I didn't feel isolated at all. Thanks to the internet and all the apps these days, we have this option, and they were willing and able to spend time with me, even if an ocean is between us.
Do you have any
Yeah.
stories from the first year when you were still getting to know things and maybe you didn't find something or misunderstood something?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, so for example, in the US, you always have to give your phone number. When you go to a shop, that's how they can look up your membership. And this was a completely new concept for me. I had no idea, why do I have to give my phone number? That's my private thing. And yeah, then I realized that this is normal. And till present day, I still don't remember my American phone number for some reason. I'm so, I don't want to do it. Yeah. What else? What other stories? Yeah, so there's something every single day that happens, and I just don't realize it, I think, and anymore. Yeah. Mm. And how about you? Did you have any situations like that in Prague or in Belgium, where you are right now?
Um, now the phone number thing really just kept me thinking, so I need to think a little bit. But for sure, there were
Okay.
things, especially in Prague. There was this whole long process of getting my dog and getting my dog registered everywhere. So when I arrived to the Czech
Mm.
Republic, I had friends to help me. So it was a little bit different than when we moved here with my partner, because when we moved here, we didn't know anyone here in Belgium, so we needed to figure things out by ourselves. And I remember just looking everything up and researching for 2 months before we came, and we looked up all the places where we wanted to go and what we needed to deal with, choosing bank and so on and so forth. And one of the things was that you couldn't just walk in the bank to deal with things. So we went to open a bank account here in Belgium. And we went in and we were like, oh, we are here to do this and this. Oh no, everyone is occupied. You need an appointment. I'm like, okay, what? Okay, then can we come tomorrow? No, 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 a week from now. I'm like, really? And the problem was that my partner started to work at the office the next week, and I work from home. So for me, it was okay to adjust my schedule and go in. But for him to get there, it would take time. And at the end, I needed to do that alone because he couldn't manage the timeline by the time we got the appointment. So we needed to get an appointment for the next week. And then I went there, and the whole like bank, like the office was closed, and you needed to ring a bell and they let you in. And then you got to tell, hey, I have an appointment to this and this person, and I want to open a bank account. And it took 10-15 minutes to figure out where I need to go and them to find the person I needed to go to. And after I arrived, it went smooth. It was just like really this like complicated thing, as opposite of what I experienced before. Because you go to the Czech Republic, you walk in, if someone is not occupied, or you pull a number at the counter and you get someone to help you and you open a bank account if you have all the papers you need. Same in Hungary. And I don't know, I was a little bit shocked that you need an appointment for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think here in the US, everything is geared toward the customer and customer happiness to make everyone happy. So they actually want your business, so they make everything really easy for you. Once you figure out how to how to do it, it's pretty easy. And I'm the kind of person who always stresses about things. Okay, um, how can I do this? How can I do this? And then eventually I'm there. Okay, that was it. So actually in the US, everything goes really smoothly, at least in the state where I live in. For example, starting my small business took me 20 minutes to register online
Wow.
from
Wow.
here. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about
So
that. How did
mhm.
that happen? Because yeah, you had this 1 year of gap of working, and I do want to ask you more about that. But then I know now you're an entrepreneur, so how did you end up opening your business, or how did you shift towards this path?
That's really, really interesting because, yeah, so I've been putting it off for a while. Everyone was encouraging me to, or you have to start this, even my students. So they said, you would be great, it would go really well. And I always been a freelancer, but I worked for companies most of the time. And one day, an opportunity appeared. One of my long-term students convinced her employer to pay for classes, language classes. And then she told me, Orsi, you need to give them an invoice, you know that? Oh, yeah, that's right. So that was the final push when I actually registered my business that I've been putting off for a while. So that's how my business started. And I've been putting it off, and it was just 20 minutes, as I said. Yeah.
As opposed to things in Europe when you need to jump through many hoops to get all the papers and applications and everything. Yeah, yeah, it's different, definitely.
Yeah. And the state where I live is really supportive for small businesses. So you can have your business. I think I'm going to say a random number, but I think it cost me less than $500 with everything
Oh,
included. So I think that's really good.
yeah, that sounds
And
good.
yeah, so the US is a really good place to start a business. That is for sure. That's another question, how you maintain your business, because it's a completely different profession, in my opinion. So yeah, that's another story. And that happened well after my first year. Yeah. Do you have any experience with this in Belgium or in
Um,
Hungary?
I have experience with it in Hungary and the Czech Republic. Yet to experience the Belgium aspect of it. The Czech and the
Sounds
Hungarian,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
The Czech and the Hungarian systems are quite similar. So even though it was a different country and different language, and I had help with it, so I hired someone to do the paperwork for me. I understood the system quite easily because it was so similar. So I didn't have big issues with it. It's just a lot of papers. Yeah.
We all love. Gotta love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your experience with this process as a foreigner? Was it easily understandable for you?
No, the language is really technical. So again, big thanks to my family who always supported me. So even with my visa process, yeah, it's legal immigration language, and also business language is pretty difficult for me because it's really specific. It was specific, but I also had help, and they explained it to me, or I looked into it. So yeah, that was kind of difficult to understand, but yeah, we learn and we grow. So yeah.
I would like to go back to the time when you were waiting for your visa process to finish, and you mentioned that you were learning three languages at once. I also went more deep into language learning during the COVID times. But I always loved languages, so that was kind of a natural path for me. And after this, you are a language teacher. So do you have any like um tips or like recommendations how to juggle more languages at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, COVID, we had a lot of free time. So it was easy to maintain three languages at the same time. I think it was a really privileged time to have time for your hobbies. But yeah, for English, my goal was to learn as much American English as I could. So I think active listening is the most important thing, and also to write it down. Whenever you hear something new, you have to take notes of it and then review it, of course. So that's what I did. I had my little notebook because I prefer to write by hand. So I had my notebook, and every time I saw something, even if it's like speed bump or speed hump or something, these small differences or an idiom I really liked, I wrote it down immediately and then I activated it at home. So my way of doing this is always writing personalized sentences for myself, because this way it sticks better than just learning about something random, in my opinion. And for example, when you're watching something, when you're polishing your listening skills, it is a good technique to listen for something, for one little thing. For example, how to pronounce something. I've been struggling with a couple of consonants and vowels in English, like v, w, and hail. So this the it. Yeah, this has been really difficult for me. Yeah, so just listen for something and pay attention to that. And if you start from scratch, I think it is really good to find someone who can help you or keep you accountable. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a language coach or a language teacher if you're disciplined. So in my case, what I did was that I talked to one of my previous students. He's a Mexican guy. Hello, Patricio, if you're listening. And we decided to do a language exchange. And I knew that I can count on him and it will work. And I know he had experience with learning languages. So we did it for half a year and it worked really well. And we were both really disciplined. And another thing I did was that I decided on some topics I wanted to learn about. And before the week started, I looked up some videos or things to read in advance. And this eliminated the decision fatigue of what to do that week. So I already had a plan. Maybe this sounds really structured or scary. I don't know. You will tell me. But this really worked for me. And I never had to think about what to do in a day. So for me, being this structured really, really helped. What is your experience? I'm wondering.
I love that you brought these two aspects of it in the discipline and the preparedness. And yes, the structure, because a lot of language exchange attempts fail because people meet, they decide in advance how much time they will spend on each language, but they don't prepare topics or they don't come prepared. And after talking about their last week, they are just getting stuck and then get bored and they will abandon the whole thing. And the discipline is to really show up every time, not to, oh, now this week, this time, now that week, that time, now we skip one. It won't work. I did a language exchange as well in Czech with a friend of mine as well. Yeah, I think there are many methods, but preparing and knowing yourself is one of the most important. So setting yourself up for success helps. If you already determine what will you need to learn, if you determine what topics you're interested in. For example, me, I love reading. So for me, language, a big part of language learning is reading. That I don't necessarily need anyone to help me, but I love to read out loud and asking friends to correct my pronunciation, and that helps a lot. But maybe some people love movies and series and they will switch the language of what they are watching, and that will help them. But if you try to do too many things at once, then you will just get confused and overwhelmed. So to determine a focus, not just in topic, but in your aim. And I can bring my own example right now because I am currently learning Portuguese. And my goal is to be able to speak on an A2 level by Christmas. So I understand quite a lot of Portuguese, so my listening understanding is really good, but I cannot answer properly. So oftentimes I'm listening to friends and I can follow the conversation and I can make comments which fit there in English, but I would love to be able to answer in Portuguese. So that's my focus. My focus is not to read. My focus is not to be able to write letters, although I'm practicing writing a little bit, but it's not my main focus. And that helps me figure out what to do. So when I don't know, I have like 15 minutes to practice something, then I most likely will not start to write a letter because that's not helping with my goal. I will listen to something and then try to repeat, or I would try to put together sentences which I would say in a certain situation. So I think that really helps. And I agree with you that being disciplined is one of the key factors. So showing up, even if it's just 5 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day, that takes you further along than if you would spend 1 hour per month or like 5 hours per month at one day, because it's the repetition, because it's the activating the skills. What you said about writing and writing full sentences, I completely agree. So I don't like to learn words, I like to learn phrases. And there's a really good app for it, not an advertisement or nothing sponsored or whatever, but I love the app called Linguist. They have a lot of languages and they use spaced repetition system, which means that they will show you the thing you're learning just before you forget. And what I love about it the most is that they use this text with the break or text with the holes. I don't know how you say it in English. When
Gap
you are
fill. Yeah.
how
Gap fill.
gap fill. Okay.
Fill in the gaps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that version.
Okay.
So you get a sentence and there is one word missing, and that's the word you are learning. But you see the whole sentence, and then it will read out loud the whole sentence. And many times, when I used it for Portuguese, many times I could already guess the word based on my French knowledge because the languages are similar or close to each other. And I currently do not use that app, but even now, in certain situations, I react automatically with the sentences I learned there because I repeated it
That's
so many times.
amazing.
It got
Mhm.
fixed, and now the sentence comes, and I'm like, just like, yeah, that's the answer.
That's amazing. So it sounds like there's an app which is actually teaching you useful stuff. Because
Yeah.
sometimes I feel that apps try to be funny or, yeah, but it's completely useless for your goal. That's just my personal opinion. I accept and I know that these apps work for a lot of people, but that's not me. And I'm going to check this out. And just to reflect on what you said about seeing your goal and then breaking it down to steps, I really like it. So that's what I also do with my clients, with my students. We know what they want to do, and then we reverse engineer the process, and we see what grammar, what vocabulary they need to be able to solve that problem.
Yeah.
And for expats who are here, I think most frequently asked questions are understanding medical things, like what to do at the doctor's office. That comes up all the time. And if you have children, then talking to the teacher, for example, talking to your neighbor, meaningful small talk, and these kind of things. And it's amazing to have these topics and then plan something accordingly. Yeah, just wanted to add that.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you. Thank you for bringing that in. Yeah, I think it's really important. It's kind of the key to set yourself up for success and just to be really clear about your goal, be really focused, and do not do things which spend your time and will not take you closer there. I mean, do them if they bring you joy, but uh, sticking to language learning, if you want to be able to handle medical situations, do not start to learn a legislative vocabulary because it will not take you there. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time when I started learning Italian, and we learned things about fashion. And that was totally not my focus because I was going to go to Italy. I'm not going to talk about shiny materials and stuff like that, most likely. But yeah, but I just want a coffee. Yeah, so exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Mhm.
yeah, and textbooks are oftentimes built up in similar structure in every language. So, it's the classic greetings and then describing family and then describing the place you live and then tourist phrases and so on and so forth. But when I want to be when I want to participate in conversations with my friends and I know they will talk about their everyday life, that will not help me because I'm not meeting them for the first time. I will not need the introduction part. I will need to be able to use verbs, conjugate them, use everyday phrases which fit in. Um, so yeah, it's important to filter out what you need and what you don't.
Yeah, yeah. And another frequently asked question is how to remember the endings, for example, for conjugation or the cases. Do you have any strategies? Because, for example, I use color coding that has been working for me. Do you use anything to learn conjugation?
Colors, definitely. I like when I can put verbs into categories, and both French and Portuguese are really good for this. So there is like group one, group two, group three, which have the same ending. And when I'm learning the conjugations for the first time, I will choose a few verbs from the same group and I will write down the whole table of, the present tense and under it the whole table of past tense and under it whole table of future tense. And I will do it with like regular verbs from each group, a few of them, like five from the first group, five from the second group, so on and so forth. And I will underline or highlight with a color the endings, only the endings. And writing these down, obviously, years from now, when I'm fluent, I will not use these, but just looking at it and going through it, and I will repeat in me the whole table, not just like third person singular, but like going me, you, he, she, whatever. And I will repeat the whole table, kind of like a words, like a poetry. And then even when when I'm running or when I'm doing something else, I try to repeat that. And then after a while it sticks. And
I got
then
it.
when you learn like five verbs from the same group, then the sixth one will be more automatic.
Yeah. And just to add one more thing to this, I think it's really good to observe your language in your native language as well, and focus on those verbs that you use every day.
Yeah.
I think that's also important. But otherwise, I do the same as you do. So that's amazing. Yeah.
A story came to my mind, if you don't mind me sharing,
Of course, please. Yeah.
which comes to verb tenses and like conjugation. When I was in high school and at the end of elementary school, and I had a lot of like medical checkups, and they needed to draw my blood, and I got some shots. I am I wouldn't say I'm afraid, but I really dislike that process, of course. And I cannot watch them doing that, sticking needles in me. And so my mom told me, okay, and I was learning French at that time, and my mom was like, okay, just repeat the conjugation of X verb in French for yourself to get yourself distracted. And until this day, whenever I have like needles coming towards me, I start to repeat conjugation of verbs in different languages to distract myself. It became kind of like a Pavlov reflex.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm gonna try it next time when I get my flu shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to my mom for the idea. Yeah. I remember you are in Georgia, and I wanted to ask you if there are like big differences with the English there, like regional language, compared to sort of like the general US English, which we hear online or hear in movies. Can you talk about that and your experience?
Yes, of course. So, yeah, it's very different. So it was a shock for me. Maybe we touched on this last time. I don't quite remember. But so my family is from California. So I'm used to that standard accent. So yeah, a lot of idioms, regional idioms. For example, I wrote down some of them. For example, that dog don't hunt. That means an idea that won't work. You say that when you hear an idea that won't work. And if you have noticed, it is that dog don't hunt. So also not doesn't, but don't. This is also regional difference that comes up every now and then in colloquial speech. So yeah, and you're preaching to the choir. This means that you present an idea to someone who already agrees with you on everything. And also the pronunciation, but it's not just Georgia. I think it's a standard American pronunciation. So, for example, if you would say could have gone, you make a contraction and you say could have or would have. And this is really typical. And they even say sometimes could have went, whereas it should be could have gone. But in colloquial speech, it's okay. It goes. Yeah. And I mentioned some pronunciation things that are difficult for me, and I think it's also difficult for other expats, so it's worth sharing. Is this um, for example, one of my American students, because I also teach Hungarian on the side, and we learned Hungarian together. He told me, I live on Stone Hill. And I was like, hell? What? I didn't understand that it's hill and not hell. So yeah, it was very confusing. This can be really confusing. And the v and w, especially for Spanish speakers, this is something to practice, I think. And this
Yeah.
sa and the
The
super
v and
difficult.
w, I
Yeah.
also sometimes struggle with that. I don't feel like I'm
Yeah.
struggling, but then people ask back, like, what did you mean? And then I need to repeat the word, and I need to pay extra attention how I form my V and W, because in Hungarian we don't really have
Yeah.
that, so it doesn't come natural.
No, many problems we do not have. And also there was a funny story. One of my friends here from Georgia told me that, yeah, I understand everyone in the United States as long as they're not from Alabama, because the Alabama accent is so different or difficult for her that, yeah, she can't understand that. So I'm sorry for those expats who live there. I know there are many. So yeah, I feel you.
Thank you, Orsi. When you teach Hungarian to foreigners, what's your experience with English speakers? What are the hardest parts for them?
I love this question. Yeah. So I think the conjugation is very difficult that we already talked about and gave some tips for them too. Great job. And that's super difficult. For example, I had a student who didn't realize that we use personal endings for 2 years, and he was 2 years into learning Hungarian when he realized that it's logical. So I think that's when you need a teacher or a coach who will help you with this. So understanding this pattern of having personal endings. Also, can I go in technical or it's
Yeah,
okay?
sure.
Because I have a lot to say. So in Hungarian, we have two different kinds of endings, and that is the most difficult for, I think, everyone, not just English speakers, the definite and the indefinite conjugation. And this is something even Hungarians don't know about sometimes, or they don't notice, or they don't know the rules, but there are
Yeah.
rules. And if you learn with someone who knows these rules, then it's easy and you can learn it. These the pronunciation. So the ones I just mentioned is the same for Americans, but the other way around. So let's say E and these things. R, yeah, the R to roll it. That's something really difficult. Yeah. And also directness or yeah, Hungarian way of talking, maybe if we can say that. So we are more direct, I would say. And sometimes it just feels a bit rude to Americans. Yeah. Very direct, not beating around the bush, straight to
Yeah.
the point.
I didn't
Yeah.
notice that, but I know that's the perception of foreigners. What I noticed foreigners have maybe issues with is the difference between o and o. So it's just how you form your basically the sound with your mouth. It's a little bit differently shaped and it's completely different sound and it has, multiple of them. And usually that's where I catch someone who is learning Hungarian but not native. And what you said about learning a language with a tutor is really important. For example, like even me as a Hungarian, I didn't really remember this definite indefinite conjugation, and I relearned it when I was learning Czech because the Czech language has the same.
Really, that's really good that you mentioned it because I rarely have Czech students, but that's a good point of reference.
Yeah, and they
Thank
can
you.
help you, and it helps if the teacher is multilingual. For example, when I learned Czech, my teacher was Czech, but she was fluent in English and German. And honestly, English is really far from the Czech language, like linguistically. And German is much closer. And when I was stuck with something, even Hungarian is closer to Czech than English. When I was stuck with something, oftentimes my teacher just brought an example from German, and then I was like, oh, yeah, okay, that's it. Or like sometimes it clicked that we have the same phrase in Hungarian or the translation of that word in Hungarian, but I couldn't really translate it to English. So these little nuances help a lot.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. And I do think that people should start learning pronunciation from the get-go when they started. I get this question a lot. Why? Why are we forcing it? Well, it is quite important, especially for Hungarian. One tiny accent can change the whole meaning. Yeah. And like English, hill, hell also. So it is worth
Yeah.
paying attention to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Back to your life in Georgia. I know we talked about it before, but um, talking about the South, the only thing which comes to my mind, and I know it's really stereotypical, is this phrase of "bless your heart" or "bless her heart." Do you have these kind of phrases maybe which you can bring to us, which you learned while you got assimilated there, maybe?
Yeah, so yeah, bless your heart. That's one of them. The problem is, I think they are so integrated now that I don't recognize that I learned it in the process. So I already mentioned some of them. And I think what is even more important is the idioms that we can learn, not just the regional phrases, but the idioms they use. So we should pay attention to that as well. For example, even in text messages, when you talk to other parents or other Americans, they use a lot, and they don't even realize it, and it leads to a lot of confusion as well. For example, if I say I'm in shambles, um, yeah, that means that I'm messed up. Yeah, my life is is a train wreck or something like that. And I'm under the weather. One of my best friends here was really confused the first time when she heard this phrase. What weather are we talking about? Yeah. Yeah, there are plenty of idioms, and I've learned more of them, I think, because I was more exposed to that, or maybe I paid more attention to that. So yeah, um, honestly, I don't have that many contact with Southerners. But yeah, the idioms are important wherever you live in the US.
We are slowly getting close to the end of our episode, but I have one more question for you. Given that you had this one long year of not working and learning a lot of languages and getting to know the US culture, what would be something which you would give as an advice or as a recommendation to newcomers who start their life in the US?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, my recommendation is to be open-minded and listen, listen, listen all the time. Also, many expats, many students tell me, I will never be able to speak like this or that. I will never be able to understand people around me. And give you give yourself some slack and be patient because it doesn't happen overnight. Maybe you have 3 years here in the US and it's gonna get better. So that is my advice. Be patient with yourself. You push through the initial difficulties and then it gets better, I promise. And for example, I was really anxious in social situations at the beginning. Yeah, like really, okay, I don't even go want to go to the cashier because I don't want to make small talk or yeah, but now or my neighbors, but now it comes naturally. And it took me years, especially with COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it's like skipping 1 year of interaction with the world for me. But yeah, so it took me years, but now I feel comfortable and I know about a lot of expats, students who feel like home now, and give yourself some time to build your American dream. So that's my that's my message.
Thank you. Thank you for the takeaway, Yoshi. Um, we we reached the end of our episode today. Thank you again, Oshi, for joining me. I hope we will have a chance to have another discussion, maybe about language learning. I will link
Yeah.
Oshi's I will link Oshi's connection in the episode notes, and you can find my contacts as well. Thank you very much for listening, and talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.